Okay, so like imagine our healthcare system is this giant set of scales,
Yeah.
and we're piling all these pharmaceuticals on one side,
Yeah.
like new drugs, new treatments,
Right.
all promising these amazing breakthroughs.
Yeah.
But then what about the other side of the scale?
Yeah.
Like, are we giving enough weight to the potential downsides,
Mm.
the long-term risks, the unintended consequences?
That's a good question.
And that's what this whole idea of pharmaceutical harm reduction is all about.
Yeah, this pharmaceutical harm reduction strategy.
Exactly. And it's starting to gain some real traction.
It is, and it's really fascinating how this idea is emerging, especially now.
Yeah, especially now.
Like, think about the wake-up call we all got with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, suddenly everyone was, like, hyper-aware of how healthcare systems work.
Right, or how they don't work sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does feel like there's this growing sense that we need to reset, like a whole new approach.
Absolutely.
And that's where our deep dive comes in.
Yeah.
So you shared some sources with us, articles, research papers, even some pretty heated discussions on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah, I saw those.
And it all kind of centers around this pharmaceutical harm reduction strategy for the next few years.
Right.
It's actually modeled after something that you might not expect.
What's that?
Tobacco harm reduction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that was the analogy that really clicked for me, too. Instead of just saying, like, everyone quit smoking cold turkey.
Great, just stop.
Yeah, tobacco harm reduction kind of accepts that some people will continue to smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So the focus shifts to, like, minimizing the harm.
Yeah, reducing the harm.
Things like switching to vaping or using nicotine patches.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does that translate to the world of pharmaceuticals, though?
Yeah, good question.
I mean, we can't exactly tell people, hey, if you're going to pop pills, here's how to do it safely.
Right, of course not. No, it's definitely more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Pharmaceutical harm reduction kind of acknowledges that medications are essential. Like, they save lives.
For sure.
But we need to be smarter about how we develop them, how we prescribe them, and even how we use them.
Okay.
One of the key ideas here is this idea of continuous improvement.
Okay, continuous improvement. Break that down for me.
Sure. So imagine a system where, like, every prescription comes with a feedback loop.
A feedback loop. Okay.
The patient, you report back on your experience. Yeah.
Like how you're feeling if you have any side effects.
Exactly. And all of that real-world data is then used to constantly update treatment guidelines and even influence how future drugs are designed.
Wow.
So it's about learning and adapting as we go, not just relying on those initial clinical trials.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to see how this could lead to a more personalized approach to medicine.
It could.
But in one of the articles, there's this stark warning.
Yeah.
It says that our current system is at a tipping point. What's the main concern there?
Well, there's this tension, between this incredible pace of advancement in healthcare and the potential for harm if we don't prioritize safety and efficacy at every step.
Right.
The source material actually quotes this fundamental principle of medicine.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
First, do no harm.
Yeah, first do no harm. That's like the Hippocratic Oath.
Right? Every doctor learns that.
Yeah.
But the argument is that in our rush to develop new drugs and get them to market quickly,
right,
sometimes that core principle gets overshadowed.
I see.
There's pressure from investors,
Sure,
from patients demanding the latest treatments, and sometimes even from within the scientific community itself.
Oh, wow.
To just push the boundaries,
To push the boundaries, yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't that how we make progress, though?
Yeah.
I mean, taking risks is part of scientific discovery.
Absolutely. But the question is, are we taking calculated risks? Are we weighing the potential benefits against the potential harms with enough caution?
That's a good point.
One of the LinkedIn discussions that you sent actually brings up a really interesting approach to help with this.
Oh, yeah.
The Bayesian method.
Okay, I have to admit that one went a little over my head.
Oh, yeah, it can be a little complex.
Can you give us the ELI-5 version of how Bayesian thinking fits into all of this?
Sure. So imagine you have a puzzle, right?
Okay.
And each new piece of information about a drug, whether from a clinical trial or a patient's real-world experience, it helps you see the bigger picture more clearly.
Okay.
The Bayesian approach is like constantly adjusting the way you fit those pieces together.
Interesting.
You're updating your understanding of the drug's effectiveness and its risks based on the most current evidence.
So it's like a never-ending process of refinement.
Yeah.
Always questioning, always adapting.
Precisely, and that's what makes this so fascinating.
Right.
Pharmaceutical harm reduction isn't just about tweaking a few regulations. It's about a fundamental shift in mindset.
A shift from what to what exactly?
From simply accumulating knowledge to applying wisdom.
Oh, wow. I like that.
We have this vast amount of data about how drugs work on like a molecular level. But wisdom is about understanding the long-term consequences,
Right.
considering individual patient needs
Yeah.
and prioritizing well-being above all else.
I like that.
Yeah.
Prioritizing well-being above all else. So we've been talking about this shift from knowledge to wisdom, this idea of constantly learning and adapting.
Right.
But how do we actually make that happen?
Right.
I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is huge. It's global.
Oh, it's massive.
There are so many moving parts.
Yeah, it's a complex system for sure.
Yeah. So how do we actually create change in that kind of environment?
Well, that's why this call for leadership is so important. The source material really emphasizes that,
Okay.
the need for someone to step up, like a real champion within the pharmaceutical sector.
Yeah.
Someone who can drive this change.
Okay, but what would that even look like?
Well,
What kind of concrete steps could a leader take to implement this?
Yeah, good question.
This pharmaceutical harm reduction strategy.
I think one key area is transparency.
Okay, transparency.
So imagine pharmaceutical companies being more upfront about potential risks, not just focusing on the benefits of their drugs.
Right.
That would mean providing clearer information to doctors and patients, maybe even making clinical trial data more accessible.
So it's about empowering people
Yeah,
to make more informed decisions about their own health,
exactly.
weighing the potential risks and benefits.
Right. And it's also about creating a system where reporting side effects is easy and encouraged.
Yeah, because sometimes it feels like those side effects get brushed under the rug,
Yeah,
or you hear about them way after a drug has already been on the market for years.
absolutely. That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Another crucial element is shifting the focus of clinical trials themselves.
Oh, okay.
So instead of just measuring short-term efficacy,
We need to design trials that track long-term outcomes,
right.
including potential adverse effects that might not show up right away.
So taking a longer view,
Yeah.
acknowledging that we might not have all the answers up front.
Precisely. And that ties back into this idea of continuous improvement. We need a system that's flexible, that can adapt as new information emerges.
Right.
One of the articles you sent talks about incorporating real-world data
Yeah.
into the drug development process much earlier.
What does that mean exactly?
So using information from patients who are already taking the drug,
Okay.
even before it's officially approved.
So it's like
By way,
sort of getting that feedback even earlier in the process.
exactly. It's about recognizing that the clinical trial setting is controlled.
Uh-huh.
It's artificial.
Right.
And sometimes the way a drug performs in the real world with all its complexities
Yeah.
and individual variations can be quite different.
That makes sense. I mean, everyone's body chemistry is different.
Right. We respond to medications differently.
For sure.
So
Right.
factoring in that real world data seems like a crucial step.
It is, and it also ties into this call for a more patient-centered approach to healthcare.
Okay. I like that.
Instead of treating patients as like passive recipients of treatment,
Right.
we need to see them as partners in their own care.
Okay. But how do we get there?
Right.
How do we actually create that kind of partnership,
Yeah.
that sense of shared decision-making between doctors and patients?
Well, communication is key.
Okay.
Doctors need to be trained to explain things clearly, to listen to their patients' concerns,
Yeah.
and to be open to discussing alternative treatment options.
Right. Not just pushing the latest and greatest drug.
Exactly, because sometimes it feels like you go to the doctor,
Yeah.
you get a prescription, and that's it.
And that's it.
There's not much room for dialogue
Yeah.
or asking questions or expressing doubts.
Right. Exactly. And patients also need to feel empowered to speak up, to ask questions, and to do their own research.
Absolutely.
It's about taking ownership of your health and being an active participant in your care,
Yeah, it's a two-way street.
right?
Doctors need to be better communicators,
Mhm.
and patients need to be more informed and assertive.
I like that.
And that shift in dynamic, that move towards a more collaborative approach,
Yeah.
that's at the heart of what pharmaceutical harm reduction is all about.
Okay. But in those LinkedIn comments that you shared, there was a lot of skepticism.
Yeah.
Some people seem to think this whole concept is too idealistic,
Right.
that it'll never really happen.
Yeah, I understand their skepticism.
Okay.
You know, the pharmaceutical industry is powerful.
For sure.
There are vested interests.
Yeah.
And change is never easy.
Right.
But I also believe that we're at a tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the pandemic has exposed the flaws in our current system.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a growing demand for a more ethical, a more patient-centered approach.
So you're saying there's a real opportunity here?
I think so.
A window for change that we haven't seen before?
Yeah. And while there will undoubtedly be challenges, there's also a lot of momentum building behind this movement.
Okay.
More and more doctors, researchers, and even pharmaceutical companies are recognizing the need for a course correction.
So it's not just a few idealistic voices in the wilderness.
Right.
There's a real groundswell of support for this new way of thinking.
Absolutely. And that's what gives me hope.
Okay.
It's a reminder that even complex systems can evolve, that even deeply entrenched practices can be transformed when enough people demand better.
It's good to hear a little bit of optimism.
Yeah, I think we need it.
It's easy to feel kind of overwhelmed by all this, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
We've been talking about these big systemic changes, this whole like new approach to pharmaceuticals. But I'm also thinking about our listener right now. You know, what can they do as an individual?
Yeah.
Is there anything they can actually do to make a difference?
That's such an important question.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is a resounding yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Individual actions absolutely can contribute to change, even in seemingly small ways.
Okay, so what can they do?
Well, one of the most powerful things anyone can do is simply become informed.
Right.
Like understanding the concepts we've been discussing today, the potential benefits and challenges of pharmaceutical harm reduction.
Okay.
That's the first step.
So knowledge is power.
It is.
But how do we translate that knowledge into action?
Right. So what can our listener do in their everyday life?
Yeah.
To actually be a part of this shift? Well, for starters, be an advocate for your own health.
Okay.
When you go to the doctor, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Like what kinds of questions?
You know, like what are the potential side effects of this medication? Are there alternative treatments I could consider?
Yeah.
Really engage in that conversation.
Don't just passively accept whatever's prescribed.
Exactly.
So it's about taking ownership of your health,
Right.
being an active participant in those decisions.
Right.
Rather than just following orders.
I like that. And also don't underestimate the power of sharing your experiences.
Oh, interesting.
You know, talk to your friends and family about these issues.
Okay.
Maybe someone you know has had a negative experience with the medication.
Right.
Or maybe they're struggling to make sense of all the conflicting information out there.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
There is. And just sharing your knowledge, your insights, that can spark more conversations.
Yeah.
And raise awareness within your own circle.
It's like creating a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Spreading that awareness outward.
Precisely. And that can lead to better waves of change.
Okay.
You can also use your voice online, you know.
Like right online.
Engage in those discussions on social media. Share articles about pharmaceutical harm reduction.
Yeah.
Support organizations that are working to promote a more patient-centered approach.
Right.
Even something as simple as writing a letter to your elected official can make a difference.
So it's about using whatever platform you have, whether it's a conversation with a friend or a post on social media, to amplify this message.
Absolutely. And remember, change doesn't happen overnight.
Right. It's a process.
This is a long game.
Yeah.
There will be setbacks. There will be resistance. But if enough people keep pushing for a better way, a safer and more ethical approach to pharmaceuticals, we can make a real difference.
It's inspiring to think about the collective power we have.
It is.
As individuals to contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to acknowledge that pharmaceutical harm reduction isn't just about reducing risks or preventing negative outcomes.
Okay.
It's also about promoting a more positive vision of healthcare.
What do you mean?
One that's focused on well-being, on empowering patients, and on fostering a more trusting and collaborative relationship between doctors and those they care for.
That's a great point. It's not just about avoiding harm. It's about striving for something better.
Right.
Something more holistic and humane.
Exactly. And for our listener out there, I hope this deep dive has given you some new insights.
Some food for thought?
Yeah, and maybe even a spark of motivation to get involved in this movement for change.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So as we leave you today, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep advocating for a healthcare system that truly puts patients first.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And we'll catch you next time.